Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Jeff Rock, and welcome to another D. Hilton Associates webinar. Today, we have an exciting program for you. We're going to be talking about planning for strategic growth in 2021. And I'm excited about this one. Not only do I have brilliant minds from D. Hilton here joining me in the booth, but we also have special guest presenters from BCU who will be lending their expertise on the subject as well. But first, let's do a little bit of an administrative rundown. We will be recording this webinar and have it posted on our website at dhilton.com in about 3 to 5 days. We also have all the previous webinars, so in case you've missed any of our great content, you can find it there as well. We're going to try to keep the conversation to about 45 to 50 minutes to allow for a Q&A session at the end, but we do have a lot of content to go through. In the meantime, if you would like to ask a question or you have a comment through the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A section in your Zoom. You can also use the chat function, since the chat will actually come to us as well. We'll try to either get to the question on the fly or answer those questions at the end. So without further ado, introducing here from the D. Hilton team, we have Brian Kidwell. How are you, Brian?
Hello.
And we also have Hillary Miley. How are you, Hillary?
I'm good, thanks.
And joining us from from BCU, we have Dave Blum, who is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Services and U.S. Centers. Jill Sammons, Vice President, Marketing and Brand Strategy. And Ken Dreifhout, Vice President of Strategy and Growth. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and kick it over to Brian to take it away. Thank you, Brian.
Terrific. Appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate BCU being on the webinar. I'm going to kind of just talk a little bit about some industry trends or some industry ideas. And I think whenever we're talking about strategic planning, and we do a lot of strategic planning facilitation, I think one thing to always keep in mind as you start talking about strategy is banking is a unique animal, but from a consumer perspective, a consumer doesn't really care whether you're $10 million, $10 billion, $1 trillion. They don't care about what it costs. They don't want to hear why you can't do something. And when you think about it, if a member goes into a branch or a customer goes into a branch, they don't think about it as a branch of a $10 million credit union or a $10 billion credit union. And so, when you kind of talk about strategy, I think that's one thing to keep in mind is that whether you're $10 billion or $10 million, you have a lot of the same types of issues just in terms of margin, in terms of expenses. Consumers want everything and they don't want to pay a penny for it. And so I always think that when you're talking about strategic planning, that's a good foundation to kind of lay. This is a strategic growth model we use a lot in strategic planning. And if, we kind of talk about, okay, we need to grow. We need to grow to survive. And I'm going to show you a few slides on what we're talking about and why growth really should be part of your strategy and part of your concentration. If you look on the left here, there's a few different ways to grow, and this is kind of a simplistic example, but if you look on the left of the slide, you can increase the revenue or increase the income per member, right? How do we do that? We can decrease costs. We can also increase, obviously, the revenue or the usage among the members that we have. The hardest part about decreasing costs is typically about 50% of a credit union's expenses are in people. So obviously you can decrease headcount. You can bring in more self-service technologies. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot of the way that people are doing business. So we'll probably see that decrease naturally go down over time. But it is very difficult to decrease costs significantly because people are such a big expense to the organization. One thing I am going to talk briefly about is increasing the revenue or increasing the number of members. So usually when we're working with a new client, one of the things that we always want to ask first is, how good of a job do we do at selling additional products and services to the membership? And I'm going to show you an example of that. Once we kind of answer that question, I think then you have to kind of look onto the other side of the chart, which is increase the number of members, right? We can decrease the number of lost members. So retention strategies, net promoter score strategies, closure avoidance strategies, things of that nature, it's certainly one method to do it. One I'm going to highlight a little bit is increasing the number of new members. So we need more people in the door to be able to sell our service, mortgages, auto loans, checking accounts, things of that nature. We can do that a lot of different ways. Obviously, We can go after new markets, so we can expand into new markets, diversify into new markets. We can also look at mergers and acquisitions. So there is a number of different strategies, and I encourage you to kind of use this growth model as you kind of think about, how do these different pillars fit into our strategy. I mentioned organic growth, or what I call selling additional products or services to members. This is just an example. This is a loan product penetration slide. So if you look, the dark blue is all credit unions. The light blue is 100 million plus. Basically, the way you would read this, credit cards to members, for example, 100 million plus credit union on average has a 15% penetration rate, which is basically the number of credit cards divided by the number of members within the credit union. And this is an important kind of baseline for strategy discussions, right? I mean, if you look on the right here, used autos is about, let's call it 15% penetration. If our credit union is at 5% penetration, what's going on? Is it that we don't have a good product? Is it that we're just not asking for the business? But at the end of the day, members do vote with their wallet. And so this is usually a good exercise to say, how much opportunity do we have to sell additional products and services within the membership? So after we talk about how much water in the well that we have, what if we need to get more market share? And this is one of my favorite slides. I mean, if you think about the deposit dollars for Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, more than $1 in $4 in this nation is sitting with those three banks. I mean, that is crazy, just the size. If you take every bank in the nation, the whole credit union industry at 1.33 is below Bank of America and Chase. I mean, when we talk about scale, I mean, these banks are massive. I read an article once, the Bank of America marketing budget alone is about $400 million. And that's not to say that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but when in our industry, obviously we talk a lot about other credit unions in our area, what are other credit unions doing, things of that nature. But there is a whole lot of market opportunity for credit unions when you look at these large banks and just the amount of deposits that they carry within the industry. Finally, and I know I'm going quick, but I want to give BCU plenty of time to talk, and I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions. Plus, Hillary said I'm long-winded, so I'm trying to be short-winded. You can also, another way that you can increase the membership, and this gets a lot of discussion in the industry, is mergers and acquisitions. This is an interesting chart. If you look at December 2009, you can see there were 7,700 credit unions. In December 2019. In the blue, you can see we're at 5,348. So, and this is a story that everyone on this call knows, that the industry is in consolidation. I mean, that's not new news. What's really interesting is when you look at the size of consolidation, you see a kind of a barbell or a dumbbell approach. I mean, look at the change on the far right. What this is definitely telling us is that credit unions less than 100 million have, particularly more challenges in terms of, costs, in terms of compliance, things of that nature. And you definitely see a trend of the lower end of the asset spectrum consolidating at a faster rate than you would see on the other side. And that's not to say, when we talk about assets, that's not to say that you can't be competitive at $100 million. I actually had a phone call with a credit union earlier this week. There's about 200 and some change. They've grown from 50 million in about 5 years to 200. So just incredible growth. You go to their website, you wouldn't know that they weren't $1 billion or $10 billion. So, to some degree, we always talk about perception and reality. But it is important to note that when we're talking about assets, assets are important. And I always use this phrase that banking has really become a low margin, high volume business. And that really changed in 2008 when the Feds took rates down to zero. And we really just haven't seen, that margin come back. One of the interesting things, and this is not a credit union issue, this is a financial services issue. If you look at the number of banks, they actually have a 39% decline versus the credit union industry at 35%. So this is just the complexities of doing business, the amount of regulatory scrutiny, security, technology. I mean, banking and financial services is a very, very complicated and heavily regulated environment. This is always fun. When we talk about growth, why do we want to grow? Why can't we just stay the same size? I'm just going to show you a few statistics here. When you look at credit unions at various asset levels. From an operating expense side, there is definitely efficiencies that come with scale. And that's not to say that there's one particular number that you need to hit, but you can see a very clear trend among credit unions nationwide, less than 50 million being on the left and over 5 billion being on the right, where you start to gain more efficiencies as the asset size continues to increase. ROA, you're able to squeeze more income out of your assets. You can see very clearly the upward trajectory. These are all December 2019 numbers. It always points to the same type of trend. Compensation and benefits. The more employees you have, the better your pricing is on healthcare. You're able to offer more, obviously more ROA means you're able to do more from a compensation and benefits perspective. I know Jill's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that BCU does in that area. Loan to shares, we're able to put more loans on the books at the organization. And membership growth. This is an important one. You're able to, at the end of the day, consumers vote with their wallets. I always say that. And so you're able to, you see this when you're looking at large organizations. There's certainly a value proposition there. And again, it's not to say that I don't want to discount smaller asset credit unions, because there's a lot of different ways to define and be successful. But this is on an industry perspective, kind of gives you an idea. So hopefully I was not too long-winded. We're going to turn it over. We're going to turn it over to our friends at BCU, Ken, Dave, and Jill. And some of the questions when we started talking about the session was, from BCU's perspective, how do these types of things I just went through resonate in terms of organic growth, in terms of, market growth? I imagine we're going to get some questions on how has your strategy and your strategic pillars changed or adjusted with COVID, and just overall the way that, either your corporate segs or your community members kind of think about doing business with you. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate the introduction from Brian, from Hillary. Thank you for the opportunity. As I was introduced, my name is Ken Dreifut. I'm Vice President of Strategy and Growth at BCU. And my goal today really is to kind of set the table for what Dave and Jill will talk about. I'll cover sort of the why of BCU's strategy. So what's our North Star? What are we here to do? What do we feel like we provide that's unique? Dave will get into sort of the what. And then Jill will talk about the how, some of the executables. As I think about all the different things we're going to cover, what I was trying to distill it down to is what's a key takeaway. And a big focus for us at BCU in recent years is when we talk about strategy, we're really, really trying hard to make sure that we're making clear choices that result in a unique value proposition. I think Brian mentioned it, financial products are becoming more and more commoditized every year that goes by. And so it's increasingly important, regardless of the asset size, to carve out what is a unique position based on sometimes difficult choices to make, saying no to some things, saying a larger yes to other things in order to be able to carve that out. The other thing I wanted to reiterate, and Brian touched on this too, I think on his first slide, is growth in and of itself is not the goal. It's an outcome of, I think, doing the right things, creating that value for members, creating something that is attractional, and that does provide value and engagement at the end of the day. So let me start with just sort of highlights to get to know you. For those of you who aren't familiar with BCU, the B stands for Baxter originally. We were chartered in 1981 to serve the employees of Baxter Healthcare, which is a global healthcare company headquartered here just outside of Chicago. And that's where we're headquartered as well, the northwestern suburbs of Chicago. So we'll be 40 years old in 2021. Perhaps we went through our midlife crisis in 2020, along with a lot of other institutions, I'm sure, as well, adjusting to what's been a unique operating environment. But we operate across the U.S. and in Puerto Rico. You can see we have over 60 branch locations. We just touched about $4.5 billion in assets at the end of 2020. A little over 700 employees, and we're primarily focused on member experience. You can see, as indicated by the Net Promoter Score, a high focus on ensuring that we're providing, whether it's digital, in person, or otherwise, a unique and valuable experience for our nearly 300,000 members. We'll talk about strategy quite a bit today, and I want to make a point before I do that, and we can go to the next slide as well. And that is that although BCU strategy is unique, and we'll talk about our company focus, I want to make sure that those who are on the call today don't simply check out if their strategy is not necessarily the same, because I know we have likely some credit unions on the call who focus exclusively on community. Some perhaps are company or seg focused like we are. And then perhaps others are a mix of those two or take a different approach. I think a lot of the underlying elements of what we'll talk about and what Dave and Jill will drill down on can be applied regardless of sort of the approach that you're taking to the market. So keep an eye on those fundamentals and look for takeaways that you can apply to your own specific organization. Okay, so I talked about choice, and key for us, we can actually go back to that slide for just a moment, because I want to talk a little bit about what we consider to be our North Star. So what are we marching toward? Again, this is key for us to know how are our resources, the investments, the people that we're bringing on aligned. And really our end goal as an organization is to be the leading provider of financial freedom to America's best companies. That's our North Star. It's one of those things that, again, you probably say, well, that's hard to measure. In some respects, it's a good thing because we'll never quite arrive. We're always trying to sort of strive towards that. And so beginning with our roots with Baxter Healthcare, we've stuck to the knitting of serving companies and serving their employees. And within those goals, you can see some of those areas of focus at the bottom as sort of guideposts along the way, right? Member growth. So again, growth being the outcome, but if we're doing right by our members and by our company partners, we'll see additional members come on. And we'll also work to earn their loyalty as well. I mentioned NPS. We really want to know what's the likelihood of our members to refer their coworkers, their family, based on the experiences they've had with BCU, right? And then finally, engagement. It's a big focus for us. And what I mean by engagement is it can span a number of different areas, but primarily member engagement. What's the depth of that relationship look like? Are we able to provide a suite of products and services that meets needs across the member life cycle and really drives a deep amount of value? And those are our focuses and our points of concentration as we continue to strive towards that longer term goal. All right, so let me give you a little timeline. The next slide here. This helps, I think, provide a little bit more color as to our approach. So I mentioned back in '81 with Baxter is where we got our start. And through those first 20 years or so, 25, 30 years even, we were really quite focused on the healthcare industry. A lot of the companies that you see there, some of which are household names, the CVS, the Cardinals, the Bostons, came to us really by way of sort of that original Baxter foundation. So I always tell folks, if you're ever in a hospital room, look around, everything from the bed you might be laying in from Hillrom to the medical gloves from Cardinal Health to the IV bag likely from Baxter. It's really an honor to be able to serve the companies and the employees that take care of a lot of us and our loved ones on a day-to-day basis. So that was really where we got a lot of our initial start. In the last 10 years, if you look to the right side of the timeline, you'll notice perhaps some different types of names, and that's been intentional. We really looked to try to diversify our company partner base from everything from retail with Target, which came by way of a merger in 2011, to United Health Group, which is a Fortune 5 insurance interest out of Minneapolis, to the latest acquisition or introduction of a new company partner in Geico, which did come by way of merger, virtual merger, I should say, in 2020. Really, in each case, we think about our business in a unique way, and that is really we're here first and foremost focused on what we can do for the companies and for their employees, and that leads us to be able to provide some of the benefits. So the workplace banking model works. It has worked, and it's worked as a result of our focus on those relationships. So what does that mean for asset growth? Again, I talked about growth being the outcome. If you chart our asset growth through time, you might be able to establish some of the credentials as to why we should even be talking about growth today, right? That's sort of perhaps part of the question, why is BCU qualified to do that? And we've seen, double-digit asset growth compounded annually over the last 20 years because of this focus and because we've stuck to that strategy and continue to feel like it's a winning formula. But again, some of the things that we'll talk about could be applicable in other strategies as well. So what does it result in? Brian mentioned some of the notions of what growth can get you from operating scale or from comp and benefits. We like to think about it in terms of what are the outcomes for members and for the employees who are serving those members. So we've organized it here in 3 ways. One would be products. So we have a number of flagship products that are sort of primary in our ability to engage with members, things like Power Plus checking or rainy day savings. Also other products through some of the partnerships that we have listed there. Technology is obviously a key component in today's operating environment. So the ability to invest in platforms like Salesforce. We rolled out a virtual work from home platform through a partnership between Microsoft and Citrix, which was kind of cutting edge for its debut. And then other tools like online banking, which obviously is a bit of table stakes in today's environment, but ensuring that we're continuing to reinvest in the technologies that matter to our members to enable them ease and access and convenience. Finally, the last one, which some people might overlook, but the value of growth also can come in the form of talent. And this could be whether it's unique roles or new roles. It could be the retention and acquisition of talent. So in our case, we've seen just in recent years, a chief information security officer, given the heightened risk that is cybersecurity. We have a dedicated company partnership team, company relationship team, corporate relationship team that Dave will speak to, which really works as our frontline point of connection to our company partners and helps deepen those relationships. And the list goes on. We've also seen it result in different accolades. This past year, we were particularly proud of being named one of the best in state credit unions in 2 different states, in Illinois as well as in Minnesota, where we have a good presence with a couple of our company partners as well. So again, that's sort of the timeline and the history. Hopefully it helps set up some of the rest of today's presentation. I'll come back at the end to sort of tie a bow on our remarks, but right now I'm happy to turn it over to Dave Blum for the next section. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken, and thank you, D. Hilton, for putting this together. I think it's a great opportunity to show how growth can kind of build scale. Again, I'm Dave Blum, I'm Senior Vice President here at BCU. I'm really in charge of all the corporate relationship management and business development activities that we do with our company partners, in addition to all the U.S. service centers and the marketing side of it. So as Ken mentioned, we've been able to build scale and invest in various new technologies and projects and people as we've grown over the last 35 years. What I'd like to show today is what we did to get there. As you saw in the previous slide, we support great companies. And over the last 35 years, we've learned a lot from those companies. And if I think back to a couple of comments that Brian made, our core strategy is really to engage our existing members, to increase penetration, and to acquire new ones. As a large number of growing credit unions are really focusing on the community, I think that number, according to CUNA, is doubled from 05 to 15. We are really focusing on the company partner and serving their employees long term. And that's where a concentration of my resources are deployed to make sure that we are not just engaging our existing company partners, but acquiring new ones, as you saw in that timeline. This has actually definitely helped us navigate the last 12 months as we have a very diverse company partner base in various different industries, which is a change from, if you remember the timeline, what we did the first 20 years, mostly in the medical device company. So I go back to our core strategy of really supporting our company partners' employees. And the nice part about that is it comes at a very low cost. As we've been able to build strong relationships with senior management, they allow us to communicate to their employees through not just traditional marketing channels like direct mailer, but the utilization of a lot of their internal digital channels, which has definitely helped over the last 12 months due to the remote workforce. So the examples I really kind of want to show today are new company partners that have happened over the last 10 years. And, as we look at continuing to grow and to continue to build scale, I want to walk you through these examples and how BCU brought these new partners and the success that we've had with all of them. Every one of our partners is unique in their own way. And we've been able to learn what their employee segments need over the last 35 years. I would say the one key ingredient, and I'll keep on touching on this as I go over the examples, is the network of relationships that we build. And these relationships aren't just at the site level, but they're senior management and even the executive C-suite in the HR pyramid. And that provides the ability to increase penetration and have these communications on a frequent basis. So all three examples that I'm going to walk through today have our endorsed branding, which is something we really provide to our larger partners due to the complexity that it is internally. And then each one of these partners actually has representation on our board of directors, which definitely helps us drive strategy and accountability. So the first one I want to talk about is the Target Credit Union. This was a merger that we did about 9 years ago. And initially that credit union was about $50 million. And over the last 9 years, we've been able to grow it over $600 million. And actually, if you include the sold mortgages, it's almost $1 billion credit unit in 9 years. We have 3 offices located in the headquarters locations up in Minnesota. And over the last 9 years, we've been able to get about a 60% penetration within that workforce in Minnesota. And as you guys can all imagine, the demographics of that workforce are very attractive. So we operate as Target Credit Union, a division of BCU for all Target team members. And that really helps with the endorsement that we get from the company, and their employees know that their overall company has endorsed a credit union to utilize them. So some of the other metrics on this slide are very impressive, especially the transactional NPS. So that 76.45 is almost at the overall BCU average, which is typically what we see between 3 to 5 year period after rolling out a new partner. Hillary, next slide, please. So you might ask, Dave, how did you really get some of these, success metrics in the last 9 years? And I'll go back to the strong relationships that we have with senior management and ultimately Target's passion for overall well-being. I mean, Target has a dedicated team there that is solely focused on their employees' well-being and financial well-being, obviously being part of that. So we meet with their team on a weekly basis to make sure that we're aligning initiatives and finding segments of opportunity within their employees based on what their employees need. And like I said, we've learned a lot over the last 35 years, especially with Target over the last 9 years. And we had to roll out various new different product offerings to make sure that we are relevant to every single one of their segmented employee bases. And they also allow us to have quarterly all employee communications. And they allow us to do that through various different channels. It's actually really impressive the amount of channels that they have, not just for their headquarter locations, but for their distribution centers, as well as the store employees. And every single one of their employee segments kind of digests material over a different channel. So we have to make sure that we have a multi-channel communication strategy to support that. Yeah, one example of this, which is kind of neat, and this is the only company partner that does this, is they allow us to send out text messages to their employees once a year through their text message platform. It's something that, like I said, no other company partner allows us to do, but it's really a channel that is relevant to a lot of individuals these days, and we definitely get some good adoption out of that. I would say another example is a webinar that we actually did yesterday for all 30,000 of their headquarters locations employees, and we brought in a financial expert that we partnered with, Jean Chatsky, and she was able to do a webinar about the 5 topics that most important financial topics that are most important during the pandemic. So there was about 2,600 people on that webinar, and then they're able to record that webinar and then push that out through various different internal channels for additional views. So that's a great way to make sure that BCU is kind of staying top of mind for their employees. So after 9 years of partnering with Target, I know we've expanded our overall products and services and met the needs of each of their employee segments. So definitely think this is a huge success on the Target side after 9 years. So definitely looking forward to Target's continued success. As you see, they're doing really well during the pandemic. So we definitely think there's additional opportunity. The next one I'll jump to is United Health Group. This was a company that did not have a credit union offering at first. So we were able to roll out a brand new credit union offering in January 2017. And we really saw success from day one. As you can see that, within what we've learned from Target over the last 9 years, we were able to almost get up to their membership numbers in a 3-year period. You see that 38,000 number. Target has about 41,000. So in a 3-year period of time, we're almost able to get up to the membership number. And overall loan balances, obviously you can see for yourself, over $300 million in a 3-year period. What might jump out to you is the loan to share ratio. This is definitely elevated when we bring on a new partner, but it definitely decreases over time as the tenure of the membership increases and savings balances increase and those types of things. I'll touch on NPS one more time. Obviously we're almost at our overall BCU number there in a 3-year period of time, which is pretty impressive. So I'll get into the how on United Health Group as well, because like I said before, each one of our company partners is different. The one nice thing we had with United Health Group is we did a company-wide announcement back in January 2017, and it included a strong endorsement from their senior management. It included a great messaging, and it also included a multi-channel communication strategy to their 180,000 employees. It went through different channels internally, including email and internal SharePoint postings. So this was actually a pretty big initiative that we worked on for a couple months with United Health Group, and it was very successful. To be honest with everybody, it actually stressed some of BCU's internal back office capacity. As the first 2 months of this announcement, we acquired about 12,000 new members in a 2-month period of time. We definitely weren't used to that volume, so there was definitely a learning curve with bringing on that much volume at one time, but we were able to support it. Another success metrics here for United Health Group is over the first 18 months, we rolled out 16 new United Health Group on-site service centers. As you can imagine, with 180,000 employees, they have large concentrations of employees across the US. So our typical rule of thumb is if they have at least 1,500 employees located at a certain site, we would put an on-site service center there. However, when we're looking at the breadth of what United Health Group was requesting on on-site service centers, we had to think a little differently and kind of go away from our traditional service center model that we've had in the past to some smaller footprints to make sure that we fit into some locations that they were requesting. Some of these new concepts only had one full-time employee located there, but we were able to roll out all 16, and we think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity that we have going forward with all those branches. And I would say, lastly, with United Health Group, employees really saw value in our overall product offering. We tried to communicate relevant product offerings to them. United Health Group employees, as you can imagine, with large employers, have segments of their employees that are quote unquote underbanked. And these individuals are looking for a different type of product than maybe a headquarters employees are. They're definitely heavy users of financial well-being products. So learning from Target like we did over the last 9 years, we've definitely learned from United Health Group, and we've invested in some of those additional product offerings as well as additional financial well-being content that not just delivered throughout our branch channel, but can be utilized digitally. I would say the last one here that I want to talk about, and the most recent one, is a Geico merger. This example is our most recent one, and this was something that we completed in August and September of last year, and we did it completely virtually during the pandemic, which obviously had its own challenges and headwinds. What I tried to show here is what we're kind of expecting, or what we've gotten over the last 4 months, in addition to what we're expecting over the last 3 years. Because like I said, merging a $150 million credit union in virtually is complex and complicated. And there was definitely some headwinds. Most Geico associates are not back in the office yet and are continuing to work remotely. So we don't have that foot traffic through the branches that we normally would have. But we were still able to attract 1,500 new members within the first 4 months, and we expect to get 12,000 in the first 3 years. While this is definitely a smaller employee base with only about 30,000 employees, we definitely feel that we can get some of those penetration rates that we have historically seen at some of our on-site facilities and grow this to a $400 million credit union in a 3-year period of time. So definitely excited about this opportunity. Can't wait for the pandemic to be over and for everybody to get back to work. I'll touch on NPS one last time because it's definitely one of our KPIs and very important to us. And I think that the members of the old Geico Federal Credit Union really weren't understanding of what service was. And our initial baseline NPS was pretty low. And to be able to get up to 67 in a 4-month period of time is pretty aggressive. So what we've seen is actually a kind of a ground buzz throughout the whole Geico Associates on the overall benefits that BCU has brought since the merger. So I'll do a little why or a little how thing here again, because I think it's important because every company partner is unique. And there was definitely a strong demand from Geico leadership as well as their associates for an elevated product offering and service levels compared to what they had prior. And with an existing 10 office facility already out there, we feel that there, some same penetration rates can be achieved in a 3-year period of time once all the associates get back in the office and start utilizing our refreshed branches and start seeing the service that our BCU employees can also give them right now. I think, investing strongly in our digital capabilities over the last couple of years, and not just the online piece of it, but the mobile banking platform has definitely allowed us to be able to, service all of these associates, all these associates remotely over the last 9 months. And that's something that they just did not have in the past. They had to call up to a call center, and sometimes that they would get a phone call back, sometimes not. So having both the on-site and the digital service channels, I think is very, very good, and is a really nice way to increase penetration. And I would say, lastly, I mentioned this before, but the old chairman of the Geico Federal Credit Union now sits on the BCU board. So it's definitely helped us navigate the culture of Geico and helped us build really some networks of relationships internally. So we're definitely getting that communication support going forward. So Hillary, that last one, just kind of in retrospect, looking at all those different examples that I walked through, I think support from senior leadership, as well as a passion from the company for financial well-being are the real key ingredients that we get from our company partners. And we're definitely fortunate to have all this success with these examples, but we couldn't have done it without the support from our company partners and the advocacy that they've given us to communicate to their employees. So I would say a couple other things that we try to do with our company partners is I bring all of our company partners in on an annual basis for a roundtable to share best practices. We listen and try to understand their needs. We make sure we outline the investments that BCU is making to support their business. We have some data sharing agreements in place with all of our company partners, which allows us to kind of report back to them on either a monthly or quarterly basis to help build accountability on both sides, as well as identify pockets of opportunity. So I would say, kind of in closing, we're very selective of who we partner with, and we really care about forging, beneficial relationships on both sides. And we feel that, penetrating deeply within the company partners that we support is more important to us than just bringing on a tremendous amount of company partners and not getting really engaged with each one of them. So as I look about the key ingredients, there's hundreds of key ingredients, in my opinion, from the marketing side to the relationship side to the digital investment to the dual offering of branches. But that secret sauce all has to kind of come together in order for success long term. So I'm really excited about what the future holds. I can tell you that BCU is really trying not to take their foot off the gas pedal, and we really want to win the recovery going forward. And I think over the last 9 or 12 months, our company partners think that we are a more valued partner today than we were before. So saying all that, you might be asking, okay, Dave, what does all this look like? What does the communication look like? What does the financial well-being content look like? What does the endorsed branding look like? So Jill Sammons, our VP of Marketing, is going to take it from here and show you exactly what some of those examples look like.
Thank you so much, Dave. It's really terrific to be with all of you this afternoon. I hope that you all have been well and are continuing to stay well during these challenging times. To follow up on the what and the why behind the relationship-based approach that Ken and Dave have outlined, I just want to talk a little bit about, as Dave just said, how we execute on this B2B2C strategy. And it really starts with every company partner all around the topic of financial well-being. And I'll say that with all of these examples, I'm also going to try to keep them really relevant to the last year or so, and then on a go forward basis. Starting with the fact that even prior to the pandemic, our company partners were heavily focused on financial well-being, but even more so now, because the intersection during a pandemic, a global economic, and a social crisis, the idea that financial well-being, emotional well-being, and physical well-being are all intertwined has never been more significant. You know, Brian mentioned earlier about members kind of being indifferent about a credit union's asset size. I would say that our experience is that similarly, company partners are really less concerned about bringing an offering of the best checking account or the best auto loan to their employees. What they're concerned about is whether they're financially well, how financially healthy they are, how can they help them stress less and save more, given all of these statistics that I'm sure you all know too about the state of financial health in our country, which is why financial well-being is a strategic pillar for BCU, where we anchor our purpose statement of empowering people to discover financial freedom. These solutions that we'll talk about today are definitely not one size fits all, since financial health or lack thereof is something that plagues every income level, life stage, gender, and geography. So we work closely with our company partners to understand where their employees need help most, and they work with us, they leverage our expertise as well to assess that among their employee population, and then put prescriptive solutions in place to help them get there and make positive behavior change. Something else that's unique is the customized programming and the endorsed branding that Dave mentioned that we co-develop with our company partners that's intended for all employees. The expectation when we're marketing inside these company partners is that we are offering value to the eligible non-member as much as we are the membership. If you could go to the next slide, please, Hillary. So with our financial well-being offering, and call it a little bit of luck, but a lot of bit of strategy, we were able to really load up on digital offerings for financial well-being, which has really served us well, of course, throughout these last 11 months and into the future. Product design is definitely at the forefront of our financial well-being, but we first want to assess the save, spend, borrow plan behaviors of our membership in order to make sure that we're offering the right products at the right time through our company partner channels. Another thing that's really important to our company partners is that we are able to demonstrate our expertise for their employees. So our goal consultants or our one-to-one financial counselors, of which not quite half of our frontline employees, over 100 of our frontline employees have gone through financial coaching certification. So anyone that they're talking to, they can demonstrate that expertise and build trust with the eligible non-member and the member. Events that we are hosting, my goodness, over the last 11 months, we've hosted 85 different virtual events alone that were a complete pivot from what we may have been doing pre-pandemic. But our company partners are surely appreciating that, and their remote employees are accessing those tools far more and with much broader reach than we had where we were only focused in locations where we might have a branch. Offering free credit score continuously, not just to people who have borrowed with us, but on an ongoing basis, not only credit score access, but credit monitoring as well. And then certainly for those who want full-blown wealth management and investment advice, we do have an arm of our business for planning and wealth management as well. So that's really kind of all of the pillars of our financial well-being program, again, digitally concentrated. As far as product design goes, I'm going to harken back to something else Brian said earlier too about B of A's $400 million budget. One thing that we are tremendously grateful for and acknowledge as being valuable to us is that company partner access. And so we're able to deliver on a lot of this marketing at a fraction of what a mega bank's marketing budget would be. Because if you can imagine all of these internal channels, if we can deliver on the marketing strategy through the company partner channels, we're saving a lot of money that we aren't having to do in traditional direct mail and other types of advertising. We're asking for the business through the financial well-being lens and value proposition, and then deepening engagement and expanding the business through product. On the left side of the screen here, you see enterprise-wide solutions, checking account, loan products, mortgage products, and then things like enhanced direct deposit, a means for us to be able to offer the access to funds that come to us through direct deposit of any type earlier than the traditional pay cycle. On the right-hand side of the screen are the types of things that really deepen the engagement with our company partners, where we work with them closely to develop customized solutions. You'll see an example here of the way we kick off a relationship like we did with Geico, and then working with United Health Group or Target to take advantage on things that are already present in their organizations and part of their culture, like their Financial Wellbeing Summit or Target Wellbeing Expo. And we have a prominent place hosting and sponsoring a lot of the activities that happen at those company partners. And the next slide, Hillary, please. Thank you. The endorsed branding also goes a long way. Now, it does add a lot of complexity in our world. The number of versions, the type of, thinking about the systems and the number of places that we have to manage these endorsed brands. But the value really comes from the affinity and the loyalty of these employees with their employer. So some of these are the examples that Dave was referencing earlier. In the upper left-hand side of the screen is this Target text campaign. If the pay and benefits group is willing on an annual basis to deliver a text to their employee population, and we try to focus on one category of that framework, the save, spend, borrow, or plan category. And then through that text, we take those members, or in this case, all the employees, to a landing page on our website where now we can deepen our engagement with them because we have lots of other ways that we can communicate with them once they're there. In the lower left side of the screen, this is an example, again, of ways that we pivoted during COVID. We had planned on a number of live events with Gene Chatsky, who we've partnered with, delivered to these large company partner headquarter locations. But through the pandemic, obviously, we needed to shift that focus, and we've posted a number of virtual events, which the silver lining is that we've been able to reach so many more individuals with this financial well-being offering. The one here on the screen was an interview that took place between a senior executive at United Health Group over the Total Rewards program and Gene Chatsky live on screen. And then those recordings, just like this D. Hilton webinar will live on their site, these recordings live on our company partner intranet sites for accessibility on demand, even after the live event takes place. The upper right is, of course, our physical locations. You'll notice here, these are not enclosed. This is intentional. These are open 24/7 with ATM access, cashless branches, usually built in a very active thoroughfare between maybe a cafeteria and a front entrance. So easily accessible for all employees when we do leverage the physical location. And those physical locations are always branded for the endorsed brand. You'll see Geico has an endorsement there from their former chairman of the board and CEO. And then our plastics. So the one tangible thing that we all have to display our brand is usually the credit and debit cards we carry in our wallet. And so for our large company partners, we do present endorsed branded plastics for their everyday use. And of course, you'll also see those are contactless. So through the pandemic, another great thing is the contactless technology. So really that is a lot of the way we execute on this strategy. There's a whole lot more that I'd be more than happy to share with any of you if you wanted to reach out after the fact, but these are just some examples. And I am going to turn it back over to Ken to wrap us up.
Thank you, Jill. Great job. Appreciate understanding a little bit more of the how. And so hopefully, over the past 30, 40 minutes, you've gotten a little bit of flavor for who BCU is, sort of the stake in the ground that we've planted as it relates to company partnerships, and then how we go about trying to execute on that approach and successfully with the examples that Dave gave. Something that I didn't mention up front, which I think bears repeating because I think Dave mentioned it, is we choose to go very deep with a select number of partners, because as you might imagine, taking a look at the resources that Jill just laid out, it requires some effort, right? Building relationships, establishing and sustaining those relationships over time, and driving that engagement is not easy to do when you're spread thin. So certainly, whether it's organic growth in starting new companies like United Health Group, or in inorganic opportunities like Target and Geico, we're going to continue to look for new opportunities to serve companies and serve their employees. And it's really a win-win-win is what we found, right? It's a win for the company because they have a less stressed employee who's hopefully in a better financial position. It's a win for the member, given the value that they can access through the credit union and the fact that there's a convenience element to it as well. And it's obviously a win for the credit union as well as we look to fulfill the mission. So I know we had a couple of questions come in through chat, which we would be happy to respond to. But before we do that, I just want to thank you on behalf of the BCU team for dialing in, and to the D. Hilton team as well for giving us this opportunity. So with that, I guess we can take a look at some of these questions.
So Ken,
one of them, go ahead, Brian.
I know we've got about 7 minutes left. I wanted to hit two of them real quickly, and then I think there's one in particular I think is going to be a good one. Someone asked about consumer deposits at the very beginning. Those are consumer deposit dollars. Those don't include commercial deposits at banks. Someone had asked about Net Promoter Score. How do you calculate it, what it is? I would reference you to a Harvard Business Review article. That was really where NPS, or Net Promoter Score, came into play. Mm-hmm. It does tell you how to calculate it. To kind of give you a reference, obviously BCU is putting up 77, 78 scores. Anything at 78, 75, 80, I mean, those are the highest. I think USAA, is the highest at 80 or 81. Airlines are like -50, right? So I'm just joking. But anyways, so that kind of, I would say go to that HBR article to find a little bit. You have some questions for this team, you can email them. One, Ken, that I think is particularly interesting is a question around fintech, artificial intelligence. How do millennials, Gen Z, how does this play into your strategy? How are you making sure that as people are looking for alternative channels for financial services, that, how's that adjusting, your strategy?
Sure. Yeah. And also, just before I get to that, I'll tack on to the end of Brian's comments. We partner with Member Loyalty Group to perform and assess our NPS score, and they're a credit union focused organization that does just that. So feel free to reach out to them as well. I did see those questions come through, Brian, and they're obviously very relevant given the current environment. I think about it in two ways, right? There's the technology and some of the developments that are happening in that space that we can benefit from as an organization, that our employees can benefit from, and that our members can benefit from. So whether that's robotic process automation or the use of bots, or we've found secure forms to be incredibly helpful throughout the pandemic in supporting member inquiry in a time of surge support needs. So there's certainly that, and we're working actively to integrate as much as possible those technologies in a way that fit well with our existing infrastructure and allow us to scale effectively our own service and operations. Then there's the strategic piece as far as potential members. it's out there. We're actually taking additional steps in 2021 to understand what we need to do to continue to keep pace with what's happening in that space and understand what partnership opportunities might exist. Just like we talked about company partners in terms of the employees and the companies they work for, we also think about our internal partners in a similar vein, right? Key stakeholders to our business, key dependencies. And so we're actively looking to understand, are there opportunities to partner? What are the newest technologies that are catching on? I think one of the reasons we like the strategy that we're in is because we've seen that getting close to the paycheck, especially the first paycheck of somebody entering the workforce, is a pretty powerful place to be, because the data has shown that increasingly employees are looking to their employers for support. They're asking them questions that they may not have asked 20 years ago because either they haven't been taught them or they feel more comfortable, confiding in them for help on whether it's physical well-being, emotional well-being. Certainly we saw that this past year, but then ultimately financial well-being too. And so we feel like having those two prongs of understanding the landscape and certainly not eschewing it aside and saying it doesn't matter, it matters, but we want to understand it within the context of our company partner approach.
That's good. That's interesting. I know we're almost about 3 minutes. One other thing I was curious about was from a COVID situation. How has COVID, you talked a lot about, I think with Geico, employees not coming back in immediately. What is kind of the latest and greatest on y'all's line of thinking from a strategy perspective? How's it maybe shifted your pillars? How are you kind of rethinking things both with your company partners and then in general from a community standpoint? Are there any differences there?
Ken, you want me to jump in on that one? Yeah. I think our strategy over the last couple of years has been heavily to invest in the digital offering, Brian. And it's not just the online piece at this point, it's the mobile piece. I think 70 or 65% of our overall logins are actually on the mobile device, not so much on your computer. Our investment over the last couple of years, last 5 years or so, has definitely put us in a good position to support all of our company partners. As all their remote workforce is at home, our branch, about 80% of our branches are open, but our company partners' employees are actually utilizing us digitally. Now, will all those employees come back to the locations? Probably not. Will some of them? Probably. So we have this dual approach, which is on-site facilities as well as digital offering, and we want to make sure that both those experiences are seamless for the member.
Terrific. Well, I think we're at time.
We are right at time. Perfect presentation. Great, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do sincerely appreciate you bringing in your expertise and adding to this conversation. So as I said before, this webinar has been recorded and we'll have it posted up on our website at dhilton.com. So if you missed anything or would like to go back over something, you'll be able to find it there as well. If you would like a copy of the presentation, Hillary, if you go to the next slide, I think it has, you can actually just email one of us. We'll go ahead and get that slide deck to you. So if you'd like a copy of it, here's Brian's information. You can bother Brian. Brian loves that.
Send it to me.
Yeah.
I'll take care of it.
We'll manage that situation from there. Again, thank you so much. If we didn't get to your question, go ahead and email us in your question. We'll be more than happy to have a conversation about that, answer that for you, get you some information that you have. Thank you, Ken, Dave, Jill. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Thank you, Brian and Hillary. We really do appreciate you coming in and lending your expertise. But for now, that's all we have. Thank you so much for everyone, and we'll see you next time.